This episode is sponsored by Ghost Town. Ghost Town is a podcast hosted by comedians Jason Horton and Rebecca Lieb, where they discuss and explore some of the most mysterious and interesting places on Earth. Take a trip to haunted hotels, abandoned malls, deserted amusement parks, locations of infamous true crime, and more. New episodes of Ghost Town are released twice weekly. Wednesdays provide true crime tales, weird histories, hauntings, and the paranormal. Fridays cover historical and pop culture fails. You can find Ghost Town wherever you listen to podcasts. This is Dummy World. Hi there, welcome to Dummy World, the podcast that looks at the underbelly of society. And I'm Cyndi.
And I'm Kelly.
And today we're looking at Unsolved Murders.
Part 2.
Part 2, that's right. First season has Unsolved Murders there, too.
Part 1.
Oh, part 1.
Part 1.
Gotta sound like you're just grunting like a goose. Oh. So I can go ahead and start if you want, because I think you did the codex first last time.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. So mine is the unsolved murder of Evelyn Hernandez.
Okay.
And I had never heard of this murder before, which kind of blows me away because it happened in the Bay Area when I think both of us were living there. When did you move to the Bay Area?
2002.
Okay, so we were both living there when this happened.
Okay.
And I had never heard of it. I got most of my information from articles in the SF Gate, ABC News, and the Charlie Project, which covers missing persons. Okay. So 7 months before Laci Peterson's disappearance and murder, another pregnant woman went missing.
Oh, let me guess. She's not white, and so no one cared?
Very good. I'm going to talk a lot about that, actually.
Okay. I mean, the Hernandez gave it away a little bit, but when you brought up Laci Peterson, I'm like, let me guess.
Yeah. So her torso will wash up in the Embarcadero in San Francisco, California, underneath the Bay Bridge.
Really?
Now,
just like Laci Peterson?
Yeah.
Sorta? Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So if you're unfamiliar with San Francisco, the Embarcadero is basically like the most busy area in San Francisco. It's full of tourists. It's got farmers markets and all the piers are there. It's full of people. And photo opportunities. I can't imagine just like walking down the street and seeing a torso wash up in a maternity shirt underneath the Bay Bridge.
No. That
would be and it didn't even make front page news.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, San Francisco, judging you.
Yeah, right. Her fetus was never found. She was 9 months pregnant when she went missing. While Laci Peterson's case received worldwide coverage, Evelyn Hernandez, a legal immigrant from El Salvador, became lost in the press. So the most horrible part about this whole thing is that she didn't go missing alone. She also went missing with her 5-year-old son.
Okay.
Alexis Geraldo Hernandez, and he's never been recovered.
Okay.
So we don't know who killed Evelyn, what happened to her baby or her son, and nobody seemed to give a shit, which is horrible.
Especially considering everyone gave a shit when Laci Peterson went missing.
Yeah, everybody.
I was living there when Laci Peterson went missing. That was big frickin' news for years.
Yeah, and it's just 7 months later.
Yeah.
Just 7 months. So Evelyn Hernandez immigrated to the U.S. at age 14 to be closer to her family. She has 2 sisters that live here already. She became pregnant with her first child in high school at the age of 17. And at the time of her disappearance, she and her son lived in the Crocker Amazon neighborhood of San Francisco, which is just south of the Mission District. So it's closely tight. You know, there's a lot of people there. The houses are really close together. There's a very large Hispanic population there from all over Mexico and South America, Central and South America. And she worked as a vocational nurse and volunteered at her son's school. And she was a very loving, very involved mom. And she was very excited about the birth of her second child. So on May 1st, 2002, 24-year-old Evelyn Hernandez and her 5-year-old son Alexis, who everybody called Alex, went missing just 5 days before her second baby's due date. She was planning on naming the baby Fernando, which, side note, is the best ABBA song ever. It really is. Fernando. So on April 30th, which is, I believe, just one day, right? 30 days, half September, April. Yeah. So one day before she went missing, Evelyn spoke on the phone to her boyfriend, the baby's father, Herman Aguilera, and her sisters, one of whom lives either in East San Francisco or the East Bay. I got 2 conflicting reports on that. The other sister lives in Virginia, so on the other side of the United States. She and her sister that lived nearby were planning a baby shower and were just kind of finalizing the details. So on May 1st, 2002, Evelyn picks up Alexis from preschool in the Mission District and then stops by an ATM, and that's the last time they are heard from again. No one ever sees them.
Is there footage of them on like the ATM camera or anything?
I'm sure there is. It is an open case, so there's not a lot of information that has been released.
Okay.
Because it is an ongoing investigation. I think at this time, Alexis would be in his 20s and the unborn baby would have been about 17 or 18.
Maybe Laci Peterson really was taken by a bunch of Satan worshipers like the defense originally said.
Possibly. I think her husband did it. He's a fucking weirdo. We'll get into it. So Herman Albert Aguilera, who is Evelyn's boyfriend at the time of her disappearance, reported the pair missing a week later. So Evelyn spoke very little English and didn't own a car, and both of hers and her son's passports were found in the apartment, and she hadn't left with any clothes or anything like that. But the pair, the cops kind of think that, oh, well, maybe she went away to have the baby in privacy.
Yeah, because
I don't know where
women do that.
Thinking comes from. I know. I don't know where this thinking comes from. I think it comes from men who don't know anything about pregnant women.
You know what? I'm going to skip my baby shower tomorrow, make everyone concerned about me, and go into hiding until I give birth. Makes total sense.
What the
because
fuck are
I am
thinking?
in a state of psychosis right now. That's the only way that would make sense.
Makes no fucking sense at all, especially because she's super excited about having this baby, right? So they don't really spend a lot of time looking for her, thinking that she's just going to come back. Like, she's left town for a few days, even though her, maternity bag, the one you take to the hospital, is still sitting at home.
Right.
So a day or two after her disappearance, Evelyn's wallet is found in a parking lot in South San Francisco. So in it there's $40 in cash and a check made out to her. And the area around the parking lot is searched, but there's no evidence that Evelyn or Alexis were ever in the parking lot. So now the police are concerned. This seems that someone has dumped her wallet to kind of get rid of evidence. Now they're thinking that maybe it's foul play, but they still really don't do anything about it. So let's look at the boyfriend. So Herman Albert Aguilera, at the time, was a 36-year-old married airplane mechanic and limo driver. And he was less than excited about the birth of this baby.
Right.
And he had forgotten to mention that he was married to Evelyn until she's like, guess what? I'm pregnant. He's like, guess what? I'm married. And she's like, okay, motherfucker. My first baby's dada is in the Navy and he doesn't give a shit about Alex. He doesn't pay me any child support. So motherfucker, if you don't take care of this baby, I'm going to sue you for child support. No, his wife knew about her.
Oh.
But she's like, I'm going to sue you for child support. You're going to fucking pay for this kid. I'm already a single mom living in San Francisco. No way. You're going to help pay for this kid. And he was unhappy about that. So initially, Aguilera cooperated with investigators. But then soon afterwards, he found himself a lawyer and quit talking to the police altogether. He had not been ruled out as a suspect, but he also wasn't the focus of the investigation. The police took him in and questioned him frequently and for long periods of time, but he never wavered from his alibi that he was home with his wife, and she corroborated that. However,
of course she did.
I know. However, his wife said that she did not know that Evelyn was pregnant until the police told her.
Ooh. But she knew about Evelyn.
She did. She knew that he was having an affair with Evelyn. I don't understand. I don't know. People's relationships are complex. I don't want to get into it, so I don't really.
I know.
Like,
I'm just like, does she have a boyfriend too? Because I feel like he's the only one who was allowed to. Maybe I don't know why I'm speculating that, but I just feel like if it's 2002 thing to do or something.
Possibly. I don't know. So Aguilera frequented the gas station near the parking lot where authorities recovered her wallet.
Okay.
Evelyn's wallet.
That still had cash in it.
Yeah, and a check made out to her. So, but he maintains his alibi. So they really can't do anything because he has a lawyer now. They can't talk to him anymore until the lawyer says it's okay to talk to him. So in August 2002, this is 3 months after she disappears, Evelyn's remains wash up in the Embarcadero in San Francisco. Her body consisted mainly of just a torso. So her head, her hands, and her feet were missing. And so was her nearly full-term baby. Due to the amount of decomposition, it was impossible to determine whether the baby had been removed like via a C-section, naturally, or expelled in a coffin birth. And that is exactly what it sounds like. So if a pregnant woman dies, the baby will be expelled vaginally in what is called a coffin birth. And it could take months for this to happen.
Right.
Pretty gruesome. And her cause of death is totally unable to be determined. They have to do a DNA test to even see who it is because the body's been in the water for so long. Mm-hmm. So I wasn't sure. I know that did you ever hear about the shoes that were washing up in Canada with feet in them?
Yeah.
Okay, so people were really freaked out about that, and for good reason, right? But the thing is with like joints and limbs, they kind of fall apart when you're in the water for a while. And a lot of those shoes that were washing up with feet in them were determined to be people who had committed suicide and jumped off bridges.
Oh, okay.
Or completed suicide if you don't want to like say that they committed a crime. So their feet would be ripped off their bodies. And the shoe, because the foot is inside the shoe still, it doesn't decompose. It gets protected from predation and washes up, put into a jet stream, washes up on shore. Well, I looked it up and I was like, okay, so what happens to a body when it's in water for long periods of time? Do the limbs tend to come off? And depending on if it's warm water or cold water, that makes a big difference. If it's warm water, say like towards the equatorial region, people decompose real quickly, either from predation or from bacteria. And they're usually just bones. If they're in cold water, their body gets preserved a little bit better, like the Bay Area. It's pretty cold water. It's like 50 degrees. And you will lose limbs because of you're bouncing around the water, your joints get loose, you're decomposing, arms fall off. Sharks sometimes will come up and, bite something off. And since this is an open case and Laci Peterson's autopsy files were sealed after the trial, there's no way of knowing if they had been manually removed, like say with a saw, or if they just came off naturally due to decomposition being in the water.
I thought it came out that hers came off naturally. In the water.
I think so.
Laci Peterson.
Yeah, heads, all those things kind of come off naturally. So a lot of people are like, oh my God, it's the exact same crime. Like they've been dismembered. They haven't been dismembered. Their bodies decomposed and they fell apart.
Yeah, they're
very different.
Their baby daddy, for lack of a better term, just simply didn't want these ladies to have babies. And so, they killed them.
Mm-hmm. So there was the SF Gave article that I was reading that will be in the show notes. I'll link to it. In 2001, there were around 200,000 adults that went missing, a third of which were under suspicious circumstances.
Okay.
Anytime a pregnant woman goes missing, it's almost always foul play.
Yeah, I mean, almost always. And not all the time, but it's also really common that when physical abuse starts in a relationship, it usually starts when the woman is pregnant, which is fucked up, but it's true. Like,
yeah,
if a woman is married and she hasn't experienced physical abuse from her husband up to that point, like when she's pregnant, it kind of like jumps up 2/3 or something that she's going to get physically abused. Something about the pregnancy triggers these men to freak out.
Yeah, I don't really get it, but yeah, I mean,
I think it's a control thing. It's a jealousy thing. It's a responsibility
they want to be number
thing.
One. Yeah. A lot of some men who are abusive become jealous of their children.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I think a lot of times it starts when they're pregnant, because they already start to get, they're seeing that eventually their person is going to be taken away from them.
Right. Okay, so let's look at Laci Peterson's case and the media sensation that surrounded that. So on Christmas Eve 2002, 27-year-old Laci Peterson went missing from her Modesto home. Peterson was a friendly, beautiful young mom-to-be who seemed to have everything going for her. This includes major family support and missing white woman syndrome, which is exactly what it sounds like it is. A white woman goes missing and everybody jumps into action. A brown woman goes missing or a brown child, people seem less than, like, they don't care.
Oh, no candlelight vigils for that one.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're not going to do that. We just can't drum up any support because the media is just not going to report on it. The media just doesn't report. So Twiggy Dammy, who is a friend of Evelyn Hernandez's, told the SF Chronicle in April 2003, this girl, Laci, she's white, she has money, and there is family behind her, but who cares about Evelyn? The first time I heard of Laci's case, I got flashbacks from Evelyn because it was the same case. That's very hard to see why one gets more attention than the other. So many of Evelyn's family and friends, they tried to get support. They made flyers of her and Alex. They distributed them all over the Bay Area. They tried to organize search parties and vigils, and they got no help from the press. The press just did not give a shit about this woman. When Peterson went missing, her family jumped into action, speaking with the press, holding interviews, visuals, organizing search parties, and this made all the difference in how long a case stays in the media and how much pressure is put on the police. But since the media just didn't do any of this, there was no, they couldn't get anybody to come to visuals. They couldn't get anybody to come help search for her. It's like when you go to those protests where you drive by a protest and there's like 4 people outside protesting.
Right. You're like, who didn't send out the memo?
Right. It's because the memo just got ignored. People just didn't print the memo. It's on page 6, not on page 1.
Right.
So for Evelyn, the police didn't hold their first press conference until a month after the homicide unit took over the case. Mind you, she still hasn't washed up on the shores yet. But it's been a month. So if you're trying to find a pregnant woman, a Hispanic pregnant woman in San Francisco with a small child, have you seen this person? Like, do you know how many Hispanic pregnant women with children there are in San Francisco, in the Mission area?
But, the thing is it's so tightly compacted in San Francisco. I feel like it'd be so hard to go missing without someone seeing.
Right.
Put up some signs.
But you waited a whole month to even talk about her publicly.
Oh, but she's off giving birth privately.
Right. Even though we found her wallet 2 days later. Okay. The delay led to a loss in potential eyewitnesses who may have seen Evelyn or Alex. It's rare for a pregnant woman to go missing, so when one does, the police should really just fucking get into high gear and look for her because something bad has happened to this woman. At the time of Peterson's disappearance, 30 police officers were tasked with her search. This included helicopters, dogs, bicycles, horse-mounted officers, and water rescue units. Nearly 900 civilians helped search for Laci Peterson as well. But in their defense, Modesto is a much smaller city than San Francisco. The police aren't spread nearly as thin, and it stands to reason that they had more resources to focus on a missing person. And also, Chandra Levy, do you know who she is?
She was that intern.
The DC intern, yeah.
Yeah, who
went
died.
missing. Yeah, she went missing, and then her body was discovered, and they found out that she was having an affair with Representative Gary Condit. She's also from Modesto.
Okay.
So it was like a big deal that this other like pretty white lady had gone missing from Modesto, California.
Was that around the same time?
I didn't look it up. I should have.
I think it is. I
think she went missing first. Chandra Levy went missing first.
But I do think it was like really like 2001.
I think it was really close together. Yeah, really close together.
I'm Googling. Oh, May 1st, 2001.
Oh, okay. So it was
Sandra Levy.
Sandra?
Chandra?
Chandra. Yeah, okay. Yeah. So she went missing May 1st, 2001?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, it would have been
just like a year
December.
and a half.
Okay, yeah, just a year and a half, exactly. So the SF Gate, the article that I read, reported that the San Francisco Chronicle published no less than 32 stories on Laci Peterson, 4 of them on the front page.
Really?
32 stories.
Before her body washed up in the bay or after?
The entire time that this is happening.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so she's gone missing until when she's found, and then there's the trial. 32 stories on Laci Peterson.
Oh, my God.
4 of them front page.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. In stark contrast, the Chronicle
I thought
ran...
San Francisco is supposed to be liberal and progressive.
They want to write what people are going to buy papers for.
Oh, that's true. I forgot that it's all about capitalism.
Money. About the money. So, in stark contrast, they print 4 stories on Evelyn Hernandez. None of them on the front page, not even when her body washes up.
That's wild.
Page 6.
How many bodies wash up? Although probably a fair amount.
Fair amount, but not pregnant missing women without their child.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing. Like, when people report on this, they don't even mention Alex, her 5-year-old son that went missing with her.
Right.
Like, this is a missing child as well.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big deal. Like, we're talking, and he was cute. He was a cute kid. Like, one of those kids you watch out for because someone's going to take you. Cute kid.
Right.
So I kind of wonder if maybe something like that happened. Because there are crazy people who steal babies and steal, like, fetuses from full-term mommies. Like,
I know.
They do that kind of thing, and then they sell them, and it does happen.
Or keep them for their own.
Exactly. Where was I? Laci Peterson lived in Modesto, which is about 100 miles from San Francisco. Evelyn lived in San Francisco. And she didn't get any press from San Francisco newspapers.
Well, it's just blowing my mind. But like you said,
it's crazy.
She wasn't going to sell newspapers.
No, I know. But still, I read her story and I thought it was very compelling. I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe nobody looked for this poor woman and her babies. Like,
I just think what sucks is the stark contrast between her and Laci Peterson. That's kind of the slap in the face. You know, if maybe they ignored Laci Peterson too, I could see. But it was such a big deal.
Right.
For years and years. Well, I mean, yeah, kind of for years until they went through the trial.
Right. I mean, also, it's like I said, like 200,000 people go missing, and a third of those is like suspicious. Hardly any of them get any press at all.
Right.
You have to be just in that perfect like zone of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Laci Peterson is that perfect horror story. She's young, she's beautiful, she comes from a good family.
It was Christmas Day. I think that also
Christmas
was
Eve,
a big deal.
Eve. Yeah. That makes it a big deal. She's out walking the dog, never returns home. And then there's her cheating husband.
Right. And that didn't come out till like months later, but yeah.
Right. But the thing is too, like, he like he sells her car right away. She's just missing still. He sells her car, tries to sell the house.
Dyes his hair blonde.
Yeah, he gets caught speeding down the highway.
On his way to San Diego.
With like 3 burner phones and like a bunch of cash.
His brother's ID.
Exactly. He's like blonde. He's bleached his hair. You're like, dude, are you on the run? I mean, you seem like you're on the run. This is really weird.
We just caught you 10 miles from the border with $25,000 in cash and your brother's ID.
Yeah, and 3 burner phones. It's like, come on, dude.
Right.
You obviously did something. But then you have Evelyn, who's an immigrant, even though she's legal. She's still an immigrant. She's not American, people think. She's had her first child as a teen, and she's dating a married man. She's the other woman.
Right.
She gets pregnant with the second guy, still not wedded.
Right.
It's just like, it's not a story that sells. But the thing is, it's like, it's still an important story because a woman has been murdered. A pregnant woman's been murdered, and her child's gone missing. Yeah. It's still important. It just blows my mind that people are just it's so racist.
It is. And it's such
sexist.
A great contrast because, I mean, they're both essentially based out of San Francisco, if we want to, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just the disparaging, that's not the right word.
Disparity.
The disparity between the two cases is, the media should be really ashamed of themselves.
They really should. And most of the articles that I found were talking about that. Like, why the hell didn't Evelyn get her fair share? Like, this could have been solved.
Or why did Laci Peterson get so much attention?
Yeah, I mean,
I guess is another question.
White woman syndrome, missing white woman syndrome.
Pregnant this time, yeah. Big deal.
pregnant missing white woman syndrome.
Right.
So for Laci Peterson, her husband, Scott Peterson, sits on death row in San Quentin prison for the murder of his wife and unborn son, Connor, and whoever killed Evelyn is still wandering around the street, doing whatever the fuck they want to do, living their life.
No, that's so sad.
Yeah, and that's my unsolved murder of Evelyn Hernandez.
But at least Scott Peterson got life. I mean, he got the death penalty, but I mean, he was convicted at least.
Mm-hmm. It'd be hard not to convict him.
I don't know. They didn't convict OJ, but that's a whole nother.
Oh, that's a whole different story.
Based on racism and the LAPD. And
LAPD fucked
Rodney
up.
King riots and all sorts of stuff that the citizens were not happy with the way the police was running in Los Angeles.
He did get a wrongful death. Like, he lost that. He had the wrongful death suit.
Yeah, but he just had to pay money. Although he is in jail now, so... You know.
Yeah, because he's fucking lunatic. He's got encephalitis. He has to for all those hits, concussions on the field. They think that, you know, a lot of people who like are in sports like that where they get head injuries a lot, they become more violent.
Yeah.
And if you're already a jealous person to begin with, who OJ was,
right,
then it just stands to reason it's a matter of time, unfortunately, before you start killing people. Or beating people.
Well, he'd been beating his wife for years.
How many guys in the NFL, like, just beat their wives, girlfriends?
A lot.
Yeah. It's like a hyper-masculine sport where everybody's like, you know, just, I don't even know. I don't get it. I don't get sports. I'd rather go hiking.
Well, I'm sorry, Evelyn, that no one cared.
We care, Evelyn.
We care.
There'll be pictures of her, and I have links to the Charlie Project that are for her son and stuff. They'll all be on the show notes on the website.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Shar.
And I'm Kelly, and together we host Drinking and Screaming.
We're a new horror discussion podcast based out of Vancouver, British Columbia, where each episode we pair a new cocktail with our movie of the week.
For instance, I'm pairing this ad with just a shot of tequila. You know, because most ads are horrible.
With Drinking and Screaming, you'll find yourself pulled into a new horror film to discuss and a new cocktail to try every week.
Every episode is laced with great soundtracks, theme breakdowns, production trivia, Char's bad drinks, and so much more.
What?
I said clips from the movie.
New episodes every week. Join in on the spoops. Drinking and Screaming, wherever podcasts are found.
I give this ad a 5 out of 10.
You know, we don't rate the movies.
5 out of 10.
You ready for me?
I am ready.
Okay, so...
Locked and loaded.
Mine is the... What are we doing again?
Unsolved Murders? What did you do?
I know.
Did you not do a murder?
No, I did, but I just couldn't think of what. My Unsolved
I went
Murder.
off book today. I talked about car theft.
Oh boy, no, this is a murder. Unsolved. It's the murder of Belle Starr.
I don't know that one.
Okay. On February 3rd, 1889.
Oh, okay.
2 days before her 41st birthday, American outlaw and convicted horse thief Belle Starr was ambushed riding her horse home in Oklahoma and shot twice. Once in the back and neck, and again in the shoulder and face. It is believed she was shot in the back off of her horse and then shot again in the face when she was on the ground to make sure she was dead.
Okay.
So a legend exists that she was killed with her own double-barreled shotgun. And it does seem likely that she knew her killer, as is common among most murders, but that also the killer was associated with her home property in some way, which is how he would have gotten her gun, or they would have gotten her gun.
Right, right.
Although there was a few suspects in her murder, no one was ever convicted of the crime. But I do think death by murder for an outlaw is sort of like the expected way to die, really.
It's a high-risk profession.
It's a high-risk profession, it really is. So Belle Starr was born Myra Maybelle Shirley on February 5th, 1848, on her father's farm in Missouri. Her father was from a well-to-do Virginia family, but he had bucked the family tradition and moved west to farm. He was on his third marriage. His other two had ended in divorce.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I know. I was like, oh, for sure, a widow 2 times over. No, just divorce.
There's divorce early on in my family, too.
Like in the 19th century early on?
Yeah, like in the, 1900.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
This is pre-Civil War, so I'm, really surprised.
That's crazy.
I know.
Yeah.
Belle, known as May in her family, had several half-siblings, much of them much older than her, and her mother was a distant relative of the Hatfield family.
Oh,
as in the Hatfield McCoys, but I don't know anything about them.
I just know that they had a big feud.
For years.
Yeah, generations.
And apparently it all started perhaps over a pig. And 13 people died. Anyway, don't fight with your neighbors. Belle was educated and trained in piano. One of her older brothers taught her how to ride horses and shoot guns, including at the same time. Although a lady, she always rode side saddle.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't. I would have just ridden Western.
Nope, she rides side saddle and has her little holsters. Shoots away. Yep.
Okay.
Her family were supporters of the Confederate Army during the American Civil War. And because of this, when Belle was 16, her family moved to Texas after a series of Union attacks on their hometown in Missouri.
Okay.
So it was in Texas where Belle became associated with the James Younger gang, of which Jesse James and his brother Frank were the leaders. They had actually all grown up together in Missouri, and Jesse James and Belle Starr are approximately the same age. I think Jesse James is like a year younger than her.
Okay.
But I think history says this is where Belle became involved with the James Younger gang, because this is probably when the James Younger gang was formed. I mean, Jesse James was like 16 at the time that he was in Texas. And he had just spent the last couple of years fighting in the Civil War for some guerrilla fighters.
Okay.
So Jesse James and his older brother Frank were members of the Quantrill's Raiders, which was a group of pro-Confederate partisan guerrilla fighters in Missouri during the American Civil War. So Missouri was controlled by the Union, but 70% of its residents were Confederate or something like that.
Wow. All right.
And it was a Union state, but it was a slave state too. Mm-hmm. In 1866, shortly after the war was over, Belle married Jim Reed, another member of the Quantrill's Raiders. And they had a daughter called Rosie, or named Rosie, but they actually call her Pearl. And she was born a couple years after they were married. And then they had a son, James, who they called Eddie. He was born in 1871 in California. The family relocated, i.e. went on the run, to avoid problems with Jim Reed being wanted for murder in Arkansas. And they stayed on the move for the next several years due to Jim's continued criminal activities.
And Jim was the one she married?
Right.
Okay.
So they returned to Texas, and although Jim tried to earn a legitimate earning by farming, he eventually returned to a life of crime and fell in with the Starr clan, which is a Cherokee family that dealt in whiskey, cattle, and horse theft in what is now Oklahoma, but back then it was just referred to as Indian Territory.
Okay.
And he also started running around with the James Younger gang.
Okay.
And Belle herself was arrested in 1874 along with her husband and others for a stagecoach robbery, although there wasn't any evidence that she was involved.
Mm-hmm.
So later that year, her husband, Jim, his life finally caught up with him and he was killed by a deputy in Paris, Texas.
Okay.
And so there's a rumor that she had a brief marriage to one of the younger brothers, but there's no evidence that this marriage ever happened. Mm-hmm. But in 1880, she did marry a member of the Starr clan, Sam Starr, and they settled in Indian Territory.
And these did you say they were Cherokee?
Yeah.
Okay.
And Belle learned the ways of the family business, so to speak. So she supposedly was able to earn a lucrative living helping in their illegal enterprises.
Okay.
In 1883, Belle and her husband Sam were arrested by Bass Reeves, I don't really know, the first black deputy U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi. They were arrested on charges of horse theft, and they were both found guilty, and Belle served 9 months at the Detroit House of Corrections.
I bet that was a really shitty 9 months.
Apparently she thrived. And the matron really was pleased with her time being served.
Wow.
Apparently her husband was not so successful, and he ended up having to serve hard time because he wasn't as cooperative.
Ah, got it. Maybe she just needed some discipline.
That's what I'm thinking. She just, you know how people thrive off of discipline and rules.
Yeah, some people do real well in the military. They need discipline.
Yep. In 1886, she was faced with another theft charge that she was acquitted of. And at the end of that year, her husband was involved in a gunfight with an officer and both were killed. So that's 2 husbands dead by 2 gunfights with 2 police officers.
Yeah, it's a high risk
profession. For the next couple years, she was tied to several outlaw men, but she eventually married a younger relative of her husband's to maintain residence on their property.
Ah, okay.
And then she was shot not too long after. So she was dressed in her finest velvet riding outfit for her funeral, along with her finest jewelry, and a pearl-handled revolver was placed in her hands. Although her casket was grave robbed before being put in the ground.
Of course it was.
Of course it was. I mean, come on, you can't live among a bunch of thieves and expect them not to rob you.
Nope, not even when you're dead.
Especially not when you're dead. You don't need those.
No, you don't need any of that.
So the list of her murder suspects include a drunk jealous suitor, her husband, a feuding neighbor, her son, her daughter, or a sharecropper with a price on his head who had worked on her property. And the sharecropper was actually arrested on suspicion in her death, but not charged with anything. And he remains the most likely suspect, as Belle and her husband had kicked him off of their land when they learned of his crimes in Florida. But he could also be a convenient red herring.
True.
So her story became the subject of a dime novel the year of her death, and she became famous as the Bandit Queen or the female Jesse James.
Oh.
But we know how those dime novels can distort reality of what really happened in a person's life.
No. Really?
So there's some historians now looking at Belle's life as being more domestic and not as involved in the criminal activity as has been depicted in the crime novels. Mm-hmm. Because there's evidence she left her first husband and returned to her parents' farm not long before he died. And then she thrived in jail. And after she was released, she seemed to try to distance herself from from shady criminal figures, like throwing the sharecropper off of her land when she found out that he had a criminal history.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting when you said that.
Mm-hmm. So dime novels and Hollywood are kind of like the 1-2 punch for distorting history's reality.
Oh, absolutely.
So in 1941, a film came out called Belle Starr, the Bandit Queen. And I just think that it's probably likely that the stories, just like whatever they said about Kit Carson, right? Like the stories of his life have been greatly exaggerated.
Right, right.
Or as he says, they may have happened. He just doesn't recall them happening.
Yeah, because he may have not been there when it happened.
Right. Yeah, so that's Belle Starr. As for her offspring, her son was also a convicted horse thief who received eventually a prison pardon, and he became a deputy, but he was killed in a saloon gunfight in 1896. And her daughter became a prostitute to help raise money for her brother when he was in jail. And she actually went on to run several brothels until World War I.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a madam.
She was a madam.
Okay. Somehow that doesn't bother me as much. Why doesn't that bother me when women are criminals? I don't understand why it doesn't bother me as much. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So she was a madam, whatever. But pimps, I'm like, ugh, terrible. Why doesn't that bother me?
Probably, well, if I had to guess, I would say a madam generally was probably a prostitute before.
Yeah.
And so, unlike a man who we know that a pimp is not out there selling his asshole before he becomes a pimp. So maybe
No,
there's a little
not.
bit of, I don't know, empathy or understanding that it's
Yeah.
more of a natural progression. And if you're going to have people in charge of prostitutes, it may as well be someone who was a prostitute as opposed to like a man.
Yeah, it's kind of like rising the ranks.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
getting promoted. It's getting promoted.
Right.
Oh, it's very interesting. That is one unsolved murder that will remain unsolved.
Yes.
I bet it was a sharecropper.
Yeah, I mean, it seems probably like it was the most likely. And the sharecropper actually is the one who came up with the story that she was killed by this drunk, jealous suitor. So it seems like he wasn't really... He should have just kept his mouth shut. But it doesn't matter. He was never convicted.
Yeah, he got away with it. Interesting. I like it. I like Old West stories.
Well, it's interesting, too. I thought that she married a Cherokee.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how many white women married, really. I mean, it happened, but rather progressive for her, I would say.
I think, yeah, more white men probably married into Native families.
Right, then, yeah.
Than the other way around.
Unless the women were, like, sold kind of to a Native, because that can happen, too. I think especially early on, like when we were encroaching on Indian territory, it was not uncommon, I think, for white women to be left sometimes with tribes, and then they are intermarried into them.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
I mean, they were left as children, and then as they become
right,
adults.
and then they were adopted.
Right.
And raised.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting. What was her name again?
Belle Starr.
Belle Starr. I think I've actually heard of the movie.
Oh, okay.
Because when you said Bandit Queen, I was like, oh, that is ringing some bells.
That's what the dime novels, I think, were kind of called.
Called?
Yeah, Bandit Queen.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
That was cool. Good job.
I couldn't do, like, something that
Current.
I needed. Yeah, I had to do something that was far removed. I don't know if I'm still traumatized from the cult season. I'm having a hard time diving into the underbelly of society, of current modern day society. This season, I am kind of hanging in the past because it's easier for me to digest.
A good story is a good story, so it doesn't really matter when it takes place. A good story is a good story.
Right.
You want to keep giving me historic stuff? I'm totally fine with that. I've been watching all kinds of period television shows recently, so I'm into it.
Okay, good. I knew that you wouldn't mind, but maybe not everyone else is into it.
Whatever. We do this for us, not them, right?
That's right.
Right. Sorry, guys. We don't do this for you.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, we do it for us and we do it for Jerry.
Right, that's right.
That's it, because Jerry's our Patreon supporter.
Right.
If you want to be a Patreon supporter and ask us to do stuff, then you can do that. But until that happens, we do this for us.
Oh, and Jerry, if you have any requests, text Cyndi.
Yeah.
Let her know.
Yeah, text me. You got my number.
Since you are our Patreon supporter, I suppose
Yes.
if you have any requests of us, please throw them our way.
Yes, absolutely.
Because we do this for you.
We do. And if somebody out there listening wants us to do something, you can always email us and say, hey, great job. Love your stuff. But you ever think about doing this? And we'll think about it.
Oh, tell
Can't
people
promise.
where they can find us to email us.
Oh, it's demiworldpodcast@gmail.com. And then there's always the website, which is demiworld.net. All of our links are on there. All of our social and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. Cool beans. I think we're done.
Yes, this has been Demi World. Thank you for listening. I'm Kelly.
Yes. And I'm Cyndi.
Bye.
Bye. This has been Demi World. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Demi World Podcast. You can visit our website for show notes at demiworld.net. If you want to reach out, you can email us at demiworldpodcast@gmail.com. You can support us on Patreon at Demi World Podcast. And remember to rate, review, and subscribe. Thanks for listening. Bye.